Let's begin here, because too many confuse love with possession. When someone leaves without a word, silence becomes louder than any farewell. Many believe this silence means rejection, unworthiness, or failure, but what it truly reveals is something deeper. It touches the wound that was already there before the relationship began. It awakens the part of the soul that has always feared being unseen. And when that fear rises, it blinds us into waiting for someone who will never return. This waiting is not about them. It is about the reflection they carried for us. Before I continue, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And if reflections like this resonate, don't forget to like and subscribe. We are taught from childhood that love means holding on. If I am good, I will be chosen. If I give everything, I will not be abandoned. This belief is so deeply rooted that when someone disappears, it feels like a verdict against our very existence. Yet Carl Jung reminded us that silence does not come to destroy us. It comes to reveal what lives in our unconscious. Until we face it, we project it outward and call it fate. Think of it this way. What hurts the most is not their absence, but what their absence awakens in you. It is not the unanswered message, but the old memory of being unseen. It is not the closed door, but the shadow that whispers you are not enough unless you are chosen. And so the silence becomes a mirror showing you the parts of yourself you would rather not face. This is the beginning of individuation, the slow path inward. It is the realization that the story was never only about the other. It was about your own soul, searching for completion in another's eyes. When that reflection vanishes, it feels like death. But in truth, it is a birth. The collapse of illusion creates the first crack through which reality can enter. And reality is this: you are already whole. The waiting is not for them, it is for your own return. So, part 1 begins with silence. A silence that seems cruel, but is actually an invitation. Not an invitation to chase, nor to prove, but to look within. Because what feels like abandonment is often the soul's way of guiding you home. The silence has fallen, and it lingers. What was once steady attention is now absence. Days stretch long without a reply, and the heart begins to interpret this absence as a personal verdict. The mind whispers questions that cut deeper than the silence itself. Why did they stop reaching out? Wasn't I enough? Did I not give everything? These questions are not about the other, but about an older wound that has quietly waited for its chance to surface. This is the first fracture. It is the place where the outer event, the fading of another's presence, connects with the inner landscape of forgotten pain. The feeling of being overlooked, rejected, or left behind is not born in the present moment. It belongs to the past. The wound is ancient, and yet it feels fresh each time it is touched. Jung said that what we call fate is often only the unconscious acting itself out again and again. What feels like destiny in relationships is often the repetition of an inner story. When abandonment shows up, it does not arrive alone. It awakens all the moments where love once felt uncertain, all the memories when approval had to be earned. This is why the pain grows out of proportion to the situation. It is not just about the one who left it, it is about every echo that absence stirs awake. Many of us grew up learning that love had conditions. If I behave well, I am chosen. If I try hard, I am seen. If I give enough, I am allowed to stay close. These beliefs bury themselves deep in the psyche. They become invisible scripts that guide our behavior as adults. So, when someone withdraws suddenly, it does not register as one person leaving. It registers as proof that those old beliefs were true all along. Here lies the cruelty of projection. You are not only grieving the present, but reliving a whole history that has never been fully faced. The silence of another becomes the silence of your childhood. The absence of one person becomes the absence of every gaze that once looked past you. This is why grief without answers feels endless. It is not measured in the loss of a partner. It is measured in the accumulation of every unhealed wound. To recognize this truth is painful but necessary, because otherwise the pattern continues unchecked. You believe you are waiting for one specific person to return. In reality, you are waiting for the return of a sense of worth you fear you never had. The longer you wait, the more invisible you feel, not only to them, but to yourself. The fracture deepens as the persona, the outer mask, tries to hold control. Outwardly, you may smile, reassure others that you are fine, that you are strong. But beneath that surface, the shadow speaks. It whispers lines you would never dare say aloud. I am not enough. No one stays. They always leave me. This is the dialogue of the unconscious, and it is ruthless in its repetition. Jung taught that the shadow is not evil, though it frightens us. It is simply the part of ourselves we have not yet made conscious. When abandonment happens, the shadow rushes forward. It forces us to look at these sentences, these hidden beliefs, whether we are ready or not. The fracture is the moment we realize the mask cannot protect us. No amount of pretending can cover the sense of loss. The pain seeps through. And yet this very fracture carries within it the possibility of transformation. If the silence had never arrived, the wound would have remained hidden. If the other had stayed, the old story might have gone unnoticed for years. But the disappearance forces a confrontation. The wound no longer hides in the dark corners of memory. It rises to the surface, demanding recognition. This is the paradox. The fracture feels like destruction, but it is also revelation. What breaks you also shows you where you have always been broken. What feels like rejection is actually a mirror reflecting the beliefs you carry about your own worth. The outer absence exposes the inner absence you have tried to ignore. At this stage, the temptation is to cling harder, to wait longer, to bend yourself into whatever shape might win them back. This is the unconscious attempt to repair the fracture by patching it with someone else's presence. But such repair cannot last, because no other can complete what was lost within you. They can soothe it for a time, but eventually their presence buckles under the weight of your unspoken need. The first fracture, then, is not the ending of a love story. It is the ending of an illusion that another person could carry the responsibility of making you whole. To see this is difficult. The ego resists. It wants certainty, recognition proof that you were chosen. It equates being chosen with being worthy. And when the other does not return, the ego cries out. It panics at the loss of identity, insisting that only their presence can restore balance. But the soul speaks more quietly. It reminds you that this crisis is not punishment. It is a signal, a call inward. The silence of the other becomes the voice of the unconscious saying, "Look here. This is the wound that shapes your life. This is what you must face." The fracture hurts because it feels final, as if everything has ended. In truth, it is only the beginning. It is the threshold where the outer story collapses and the inner journey begins. The fracture reveals the split between who you are and who you pretend to be. And until you see that split, there can be no healing. So the silence that feels unbearable is not your enemy. It is the first teacher. It shows you that what you called love may have been a bargain, an arrangement shaped by fear. It reveals that what you long for most cannot be given from the outside. The fracture is cruel, but it is also the invitation to turn toward yourself. And from this point forward, the path of individuation becomes possible. Because only when the mask cracks, only when the fracture is exposed, can the deeper work begin. What looks like rejection is really the soul's way of leading you toward a truth you can no longer ignore. The fracture has been revealed. The silence is no longer just about the other person. It has become a mirror that reflects what lies within. Here, the inner battle begins between the persona we show the world and the shadow we try to hide. The persona says, "I am fine. I am strong. I will not let this absence touch me." But beneath that mask, the shadow whispers words that sting. "I am invisible. I am unworthy. I will always be left behind." The tension between these two voices is exhausting. Outwardly, there is composure. Inwardly, there is turmoil. Jung described the persona as the mask we create to survive in society. It is necessary, we cannot live without it. But when the mask becomes too rigid, it blocks access to the truth of the soul. The shadow, in contrast, is everything that does not fit the mask. It contains the rejected feelings, the hidden fears, and even the forgotten strengths. When someone leaves, when silence arrives, the shadow pushes itself forward with force. At this stage, the inner conflict grows sharper. One part of you wants to chase to repair, to restore the image of being chosen. Another part knows this chasing will only deepen the wound. This is the dangerous cycle. The more you try to maintain the mask, the stronger the shadow becomes. The harder you fight to appear unshaken, the louder the inner voice reminds you of your deepest insecurity. This conflict is not only psychological, it shows itself in the body. Restless nights, heavy mornings, and a tightness in the chest. The body reveals what the persona tries to conceal. Jung often spoke of the body as carrying messages from the unconscious. When we ignore the shadow, the body expresses it for us. Here we meet a painful truth. The other person did not only leave because of circumstance. They may have been fleeing their own shadow, the parts of themselves they could not face. You may have mirrored something in them that was too raw, too unbearable. They withdrew not only from you, but from their own reflection. And yet, in their leaving, your own shadow was awakened. the encounter becomes mutual exposure. Two masks cracked open, revealing what each could not bear to see. This is why relationships are such powerful teachers. They do not simply connect two people. They connect two unconscious worlds, two sets of wounds and projections. You do not fall in love with the other as they truly are. You fall in love with what you see in them, what they reflect back to you. And when that reflection collapses, you feel as though you have lost yourself. The persona longs for control. It wants to keep the story intact, to maintain the image of being loved, chosen, and secure. But the shadow demands honesty. It calls you to face the old patterns that have defined love as performance sacrifice or survival. In this clash, you stand at a crossroads. Will you keep reinforcing the mask? Or will you listen to the voice you fear most? Many resist this moment. They redouble their efforts to appear perfect, to prove worth, to win back the illusion. Yet this is only another form of bondage, because no mask, however polished, can heal the wound that lies underneath. The more you depend on the mask, the more fragile it becomes. And the more you depend on another's gaze, the more desperate you feel when that gaze turns away. Jung observed that until we make the unconscious conscious, it governs our life, and we call it fate. Here lies the danger. If you do not confront the shadow, you repeat the pattern. You attract the same kind of absence again and again, each time believing it is a new story, each time reliving the same old wound. The names and faces may change, but the emotional script remains. The inner split between persona and shadow also creates loneliness. You smile outwardly, but inwardly feel unseen. You present strength, but secretly carry despair. Others may admire your composure while you quietly ache for recognition. This is the cost of wearing a mask too long. You become invisible to yourself. And yet within the shadow lies not only pain, but potential. The shadow does not hold only the wounds. It also contains the unlived parts of the self, the confidence you suppressed, the strength you denied, the boundaries you never claimed. To face the shadow is to reclaim these forgotten gifts. But this cannot happen if the persona keeps insisting that everything is fine. This is why the silence of another person is so disruptive. It tears open the mask. It forces you to sit with what lies beneath. No amount of pretending can silence the inner voice that says, "This is where you must look." Though painful, this confrontation is the necessary step before awakening. Without it, there is no growth, only repetition. The image of light and shadow offers guidance here. The persona is like the bright room where everything appears orderly. The shadow is the locked basement filled with what has been thrown away. To live only in the bright room is to live half a life. But to descend into the basement is to discover the truth that has been avoided. Relationships, especially those that break us, are the key that unlocks that door. So this part of the journey is not about healing yet. It is about recognition. It is about seeing clearly the mask you have worn and the voice you have silenced. It is about admitting that love has often been driven by fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of invisibility, fear of not being enough. Until this fear is acknowledged, the mask and the shadow will keep fighting inside you. And so the silence of another person becomes a symbol. It is not just an ending, but a summons to honesty. The fracture you felt was not only in the relationship, it was the split within yourself. The mask tried to protect the shadow, tried to reveal. Both belong to you. Both demand to be seen. This is the heart of the conflict. To keep the mask or to face the shadow. To maintain the illusion or to begin the descent into truth. This is the choice that defines the next stage of individuation. And though frightening, it is the only way forward. The struggle between mask and shadow cannot last forever. There comes a moment when the tension itself becomes unbearable. The persona has grown thin, the shadow has grown loud, and the soul can no longer remain divided. Out of this inner conflict, a realization begins to rise, quiet at first, but unmistakable. Awakening often begins with a collapse. The old strategies no longer work. Waiting for the other person to return only deepens the emptiness. Pretending to be unaffected feels hollow. Chasing after answers offers no relief. What once protected now imprisons. In this collapse, something new becomes possible. The soul whispers what the ego resists. The wound you are chasing outside is the wound you must face inside. Jung described this as the beginning of individuation, the turning inward to reclaim the parts of the self projected onto others. You begin to see that what you longed for in another was not their true being, but your own image reflected back. The love you thought you lost was never fully about them. It was about the part of you placed in them, hoping they would carry it safely. Here, the mirror image becomes clear. You were not waiting for him or for her, you were waiting for yourself. The qualities you admired, the feelings of being whole, the sense of being chosen, these were always your own fragments projected outward and returned as illusion. Awakening is the moment you recognize this truth. Painful, yes, but liberating. Consider the symbolism of the mirror. When another reflects back the hidden parts of your soul, you feel alive. When they disappear, it feels as though you have vanished too. But the mirror was never the source of your being. It was only the surface where your own light appeared. To keep waiting for the mirror is to forget the light was yours all along. This realization brings grief. The collapse of illusion feels like another loss, yet beneath the grief is clarity. What left was never truly yours. What remains is what has always been waiting, the self you abandoned in the pursuit of another's gaze. In awakening, you begin to see that what you called love may have been need, what you called devotion may have been fear, and what you called rejection may have been escape from a truth you were not ready to face. Awakening is rarely gentle. It strips away comfort. It demands that you sit with the silence without reaching for distraction. It asks you to name the inner sentences you have lived by. I am only worthy if chosen. I am only safe if loved by another. I am only visible when reflected in someone else's eyes. These beliefs unravel when faced directly. They dissolve under the weight of awareness. Jung often said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." To awaken is to withdraw the projection, to stop demanding that another person carry the burden of your worth. It is to reclaim what was yours all along. This is not the end of love. It is the beginning of true love, the kind that arises from fullness, not from lack. Imagine the moment when the fog lifts after a long night. The landscape is the same, but your vision is clearer. What once seemed distant or unreachable now lies before you with sharp edges and real contours. Awakening feels like this. The same life remains, but the illusion that clouded it has dissolved. You see with new eyes. At this stage, the heart begins to soften. No longer is the silence of another interpreted as proof of your invisibility. Instead, it is understood as their own struggle, their own shadow they could not face. You realize their leaving was not your failure, but their flight. And in that clarity, the sting begins to lessen. What felt like personal rejection transforms into recognition. Each soul moves at its own pace, and not everyone is ready to walk the path inward. This reframing shifts everything. The ego still longs for answers, still insists that if they returned, it would prove you were worthy. But the soul knows better. The absence is no longer a verdict. It is an opening. It is the place where you can return to yourself. Awakening also carries responsibility. To see clearly means you can no longer live in the old way. You cannot pretend that someone else will save you. You cannot keep offering yourself completely while abandoning your own center. To awaken is to accept that the love you crave must begin within. It is to take back what you gave away without awareness. This responsibility may feel heavy, but it is also freedom. No longer do you wait endlessly for another's approval. No longer do you collapse when someone turns away. You recognize that while others may enrich your life, they cannot define your worth. Your essence is not negotiable, and it does not vanish with another's silence. Symbolically, this awakening is like walking through a doorway. Behind you lies the dim room of projection filled with mirrors that distort your image. Ahead lies a space not yet fully lit but real. The doorway is narrow. You cannot carry illusions with you. To step through requires letting go of the fantasy that someone else can complete you. It requires courage to face the self as it truly is, unadorned and unreflected. Yet the reward is profound. With each step inward, you recover pieces of yourself once hidden in others. The strength you admired in them, the tenderness you longed for, the sense of being seen, these qualities awaken within you. They are not borrowed anymore. They are yours. This is the heart of individuation, becoming whole by integrating what was once split apart. Awakening does not mean the end of longing. The ache may remain, but its meaning changes. It is no longer the ache for another's return. It is the ache of the soul reaching for its own fullness. This longing pulls you forward, not backward. It guides you to discover what life feels like when you no longer betray yourself in the name of love. And so, the silence that once shattered you becomes the teacher. The absence that seemed unbearable reveals itself as the doorway to presence. The wound that once felt like punishment becomes the path to wholeness. This is awakening, not a sudden escape from pain, but the slow transformation of pain into clarity. From here, the path begins to turn toward action. The recognition must become a boundary. The awareness must become a choice. Awakening is only the beginning, the preparation for the next step, where you claim your worth not by waiting, but by living. Awakening without action quickly fades. Insight alone cannot carry you forward. To live differently, you must choose differently. The soul, having seen the truth, now demands proof in your daily life. Awareness must become embodiment. This is the threshold where boundaries emerge, not boundaries as walls against love, but as lines that honor your own worth. A boundary is the moment you say, I will not abandon myself again in order to be chosen by another. It is not spoken loudly. It is lived quietly in decisions that reshape the rhythm of your days. Jung wrote that individuation requires differentiation, the ability to stand as oneself without being swallowed by the collective or by another person's needs. To set a boundary is to affirm your own center. It is to say, my wholeness is not negotiable. And once this decision is made, something shifts. You no longer live at the mercy of silence. Consider the difference between demand and standard. A demand insists that the other must give you what you lack, or you cannot feel secure. A standard, however, is the ground you walk on. It says, I will remain true to my dignity whether or not another stays. This subtle shift changes everything. Demands breed control, but standards cultivate freedom. Boundaries begin with simple choices. You no longer wait endlessly for the message that never arrives. You no longer sacrifice sleep, health, or peace to monitor the absence of another. You redirect energy inward toward what nourishes you. This is not cold withdrawal. It is warm self-respect. By refusing to chase what diminishes you, you affirm that your soul is not disposable. This transformation can feel unsettling. The ego clings to the old script. If I give more, I will finally be seen. But now you recognize the trap. Love given from fear is not love at all. It is bargaining. By setting a boundary, you refuse to make such bargains. You refuse to reduce your worth to a negotiation. Symbolically, this is the act of stepping out of the broken mirror. You no longer try to piece together your image from shards left by someone who turned away. You return to the clear mirror of your own soul. Here, you do not beg for reflection. You provide it yourself. The image you see is whole, even if imperfect. And for the first time, it is yours. Boundaries also reveal who can truly walk beside you. When you stop overgiving, those who only thrived on your self-abandonment will drift away. At first, this feels like another loss, but soon you see it as freedom. Because those who remain, or those who arrive, meet you at your true level, not at the level of your wound. This is not about punishing the other, nor about closing your heart. It is about shifting the ground on which love is built. Love can only grow where freedom exists. When you stop controlling and stop being controlled, you create the possibility of genuine connection. This is the paradox. By needing less, you allow more. The choice to set a boundary is also the choice to live with discomfort. There will be moments when the old longing rises, urging you to break your promise to yourself. There will be nights when silence feels unbearable. But each time you hold the boundary, you strengthen your center. You remind yourself that self-abandonment is no longer an option. In Jungian terms, this is the step from unconscious repetition to conscious creation. You are no longer driven blindly by the shadow's fear of rejection. Instead, you face the fear and act differently. You choose self-respect over self-erasure. You choose presence over projection. You choose to live from within, not from the absence of another. Imagine a garden, long neglected, because all attention was given to another's field. Weeds have grown, the soil has hardened. When you set a boundary, you turn back to your own ground. You clear, you water, you plant. Slowly, new life returns. The fragrance is not for someone else to validate you. It is the natural reward of tending your own soul. Boundaries also bring clarity to relationships. Without them, love becomes a silent plea. Stay, so I may feel whole. With them, love becomes an offering. I am whole, and I choose to share myself with you. One form drains both partners, the other enriches both. To live with boundaries is to make this shift from need to choice. Do not mistake this for easy work. Transformation rarely feels triumphant. It often feels lonely, even harsh. But beneath that loneliness is a new strength, the strength of standing within your own life. You may still feel the ache of the past, but it no longer controls you. You may still long for connection, but you no longer betray yourself to have it. This is the true meaning of turning awakening into action. To know you are whole is a thought. To live as whole is a practice. Each decision becomes a small act of individuation. Each boundary becomes a reminder that your worth is not fragile, not conditional, not waiting for permission. The journey has come full circle. What began as silence from another has become a mirror that revealed your own silence toward yourself. What first appeared as rejection has unfolded into the path of return. You now see that their leaving was never a verdict against your worth. It was a summons to look within, to notice the wound that long ago taught you to equate love with survival. In their absence, you were asked to remember yourself. The core lesson is this: people do not complete us. They reveal where we have not yet completed ourselves. Each bond, whether brief or lasting, awakens something that belongs to us. When the reflection disappears, the truth remains: your soul is still whole. Jung often reminded us that the unconscious will direct your life until you make it conscious. And in this story, consciousness has been born out of pain. The shadow that once whispered, "You are invisible now," becomes the teacher that says, "You have always been enough." This realization does not erase longing, it transforms it. You no longer wait for one person to return so you may feel worthy again. You now long for something higher, the steady ground of living without abandoning yourself. The fracture that once broke you has become the doorway. Through it, you stepped from projection into presence, from fear into clarity, from bargaining into freedom. The old sentences lose their power because you no longer give them authority. What remains is peace, not the peace of never being hurt, but the peace of knowing that even in hurt you do not vanish. Your worth is not tied to another's silence or another's return. It rests quietly within you, like a flame that cannot be extinguished. This is individuation in its most human form. To live not as a mask, nor as a shadow, but as a whole being who can love without losing herself. To offer presence freely because presence is no longer a bargaining chip. To walk beside another, not as savior or prisoner, but as companion. The final truth is simple. You were never too much, and you were never not enough. The one who left was facing their own shadow, and you, in facing yours, discovered the deeper gift, the return to yourself. Do not close this chapter with anger. Close it with gratitude. Gratitude for what was revealed. Gratitude for what was healed. Gratitude for the awakening that emerged from silence. Because even painful teachers leave behind sacred lessons. So now you carry this wisdom forward. Love is not possession. Love is not fear, disguised as devotion. Love is the meeting of two whole beings, each free, each grounded in their own truth. Anything less is illusion. And if you ever doubt again, remember this: people may walk away, but your own soul does not abandon you. When you return to it, you discover the one bond that never breaks. That bond is with yourself. Take this with you. Rejection is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of seeing where you once rejected yourself. Healing is the act of no longer doing so. Before we part, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, what sentence will you choose to carry forward? Let it be one that affirms your dignity, your presence, your wholeness. Perhaps simply this: I choose myself. I return to myself. And if these words resonate, share them in the comments below. Not only as a message to me, but as a sign to yourself and to others walking the same path that you have remembered who you are. Your story does not end with the one who left. It begins with the one who came back, your own soul.